Last week, the Abbey received an email from someone that wrote, "I'm writing to you in dismay as the ongoing genocide of Palestinians has been weighing on my mind greatly. Everyone had a statement about October 7, but have since turned a blind eye to the torture, rape, and murder of thousands of people. I have lost faith in almost all public-facing Dharma teachers. How can someone teach me about metta, bodhicitta, or any of the foundational practices of Buddhism and treat the lives of Israelis as more important than that of the Palestinians? Can you shed some light on this? Is the Abbey against the actions of Israel?" So, on behalf of the Abbey, I would like to thank this person for reaching out, and also to assure them that all of us here at the Abbey are also deeply saddened by this horrific situation in Gaza. And it's probably true that no statement has been issued or BBC has been done on this situation for a while. So one reason is probably that we just came out of a 3-month retreat, our yearly winter retreat. And during that retreat, community members are encouraged not to spend a lot of time reading the news, and some people choose to abstain entirely because it can be really time-consuming, and we want to focus most of our time and energy on our practice. So that might sound selfish, but I don't think it is, because we always generate the bodhicitta motivation for everything that we do here. We dedicate all our practices and efforts to the welfare of all sentient beings. But we also understand that in order to benefit other beings most effectively, we need to work on ourselves. We need to tame our mind, which is often compared to a wild elephant. And so that means especially learning how to overcome afflictions like anger, greed, ignorance, and so on. And then replace those with positive qualities like compassion, generosity, and wisdom. So during the winter retreat, we have an opportunity to really do a lot of that inner work, which we need to be able to do outer work and benefit others. And then since coming out of retreat, there's just been a huge amount of news and also other things to catch up on. So just because the Abbey hasn't made a public statement about the war in Gaza doesn't mean we don't care about the Palestinians. So that's not at all the case. And it also doesn't mean that we support the actions of Israel, as this email suggests. So yeah, please don't make that assumption. So as Buddhist practitioners, we are against all acts of violence done by any individual, any group, because such acts only bring harm and no benefit. And the first precept in Buddhism is to stop killing. And that doesn't only mean we ourselves refrain from killing, it also means we avoid encouraging others to kill, and we don't support acts of killing, violence, and harm. We don't rejoice in such acts, and we train our minds to completely abandon even thoughts of killing and violence. This is a huge part of our practice. And so it goes without saying that we do not support this violence in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. There's lots of other places where fighting and horrible things are going on. Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, and Yemen, and so forth. But we also work on keeping our mind balanced, free from anger, hatred, bias, blame, and despair or personal distress about all the suffering that's going on. And it's not easy to do that, But we recognize that those kind of attitudes don't help, and they just lead to more suffering and more negativity. And we take as our role model His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who, in spite of the Chinese occupation of Tibet that led to a large number of deaths and a huge amount of suffering and forced him into exile, he always encourages Tibetan people as well as his disciples to not hate the Chinese, but to cultivate compassion for them. And there's also the inspiring example of Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, who didn't take sides during the Vietnam War, but worked compassionately to help everyone affected by the war. And due to his stance, he was exiled by both the North and South Vietnamese governments. So holding a position of equanimity in a situation of conflict is very, very difficult. But that is our spiritual work, to cultivate compassion for both sides, understanding there's a lot of suffering and confusion on both sides of a conflict. And compassion doesn't mean condoning harmful actions, right? That's really important to understand. So our practice involves mentally separating the person doing the harmful action and the harmful action. And then we condemn those actions, but still hold that person with love and compassion and patience and wish to help them as much as possible. Not easy to do, but that's what we work on. So over the past few days since I first read that email, I've been going online and I've found lots of essays, articles, and editorials on this topic, some from Buddhist teachers and groups. So I found one by Bhikkhu Bodhi, who describes himself as a senior American Buddhist monk of Jewish ethnicity. And he wrote a really powerful essay in a website called Common Dreams, which seems to be a kind of online magazine that different people contribute to. And in his essay, he says he's been deeply distressed by Israel's military assault on the population of Gaza. I see this campaign as perhaps the gravest moral crisis of our time. And he goes on to give 5 reasons for this view, which I won't go into, but you can read that yourself. It's very, very powerful. And I also found a really beautiful article by Tara Brach, the Buddhist teacher and author, and it was published last June in Lion's Roar, and the title is Gaza and the Bodhisattva Path. And she writes, over these months, my deepest inquiries continue to be, what is love asking from me? How can we take action in ways that liberate ourselves and others? These questions have led me to seek a deeper understanding of the historical conditions that contributed to this current situation. And she says she's also led meditation events for those directly impacted, contacted political representatives, called for a ceasefire, donated to humanitarian organizations, and write articles encouraging others to engage in compassionate activism. She says, my dialogues with Palestinians, Israelis, friends, students, and many others holding diverse perspectives and experiences have broadened and refined my views, as well as helped illuminate my own biases. And through all this time, I have witnessed a courage, wisdom, and love in some of those closest to the suffering that has inspired my heart. She also writes, external strategies alone, like political and social activism, will never be the whole answer. Human violence arises out of our delusion of separation, the perception of us against them that leads us to fearing and then hating and demonizing others. There will be no genuine justice and healing in our world unless we dedicate ourselves to evolving our human heart and spirit. We need to realize our intrinsic belonging to one another. So she's, the article is really beautiful, and I encourage you to read that. And then Bhikkhu Bodhi's essay concludes with suggestions on how we can act, like joining marches, writing to the White House and our representatives in Congress, posting relevant news articles and commentary on our social media platforms, writing articles, and talking with friends. So I think that instead of getting stuck in unhelpful states of mind like anger, anxiety, and despair, it's better to do whatever we can to try to bring this war to an end. And just some suggestions. There are some groups in Israel that we can support. Lots of groups working for peace. And the one that I'm most familiar with is called Women Wage Peace. It was started more than 10 years ago by a group of Israeli women, but anybody can join. And their goal is to promote a nonviolent, respectful, and mutually accepted solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And they're the largest grassroots peace movement in Israel. And they also often partner with another women's organization that is dedicated to peace called Women of the Sun, which was established in 2021 by Palestinian women from the West Bank, Gaza, and the Palestinian diaspora. So those two groups, Women of the Sun and Women Wage Peace, work together and organize a lot of activities. They're just totally 100% dedicated to a peaceful solution. And then there's also organizations here in America that you can join. One is the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, another called Buddhists for Justice in Palestine, and one I just found yesterday called the Jewish Voice for Peace. And you don't have to be Jewish to join, but they say they're the world's largest Jewish organization standing in solidarity with Palestine. And they do a lot of activism. And just this week, they encouraged people to write to their senators and urge them to support a motion that was introduced by Bernie Sanders to block our government's plan to sell another $8.8 billion worth of weapons to Israel. Unfortunately, they voted yesterday, and only 15 senators supported this motion. And sadly, our two Washington senators were not among those who voted. But Jeff Merkley from Oregon did. He supported it. It takes a lot of courage to stand up for Palestine, because you get slammed as being anti-Semitic, and you're really risking your reputation and other things. So anyway, these are just a few comments I'm offering, and I'm someone who isn't really fully informed about this situation. It's really, really complex, and I don't know everything about it, but mainly I just wanted to ensure everyone out there that here at the Abbey, we are all very much concerned about this situation, and we support all efforts to bring the war to an end and to aid those who have suffered horribly from this conflict. We support organizations like Doctors Without Borders and the World Central Kitchen that provide assistance on the ground. And also every day we dedicate our prayers and merits to peace and an end to conflict and suffering everywhere in the world. And this weekend, the Abbey is holding a retreat on compassion called Standing Up for Compassion. And if you can't join in person, you can join by Zoom. It starts tonight. Oh, YouTube, not Zoom. Okay. So that means you can also watch later. Great. Okay, so let's do everything we can to keep our hearts and our minds as pure and positive as possible. Wishing everyone everywhere to have peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering.